right, everybody. This is a welcome to the Command Show. We're excited today to have a dear friend, mentor, superhero, villain, both at the same time. He's like Batman. Dan Shaw, Chief Dan Shaw from Fairfax County, Virginia Fire Department, now retired, wearing the international symbol of retirement like myself. We both have our beards. As you can see, our dear friend Brian is not there yet, bless his heart, but he will be. But before we get into Chief Shaw and his experience and wisdom he's going to share with us, what we do on every Command Show, we always start with the NIOSH 5. And NIOSH is kind of under attack right now. It's dwindling. The staffing is at bare bones, if that. But the fires don't know that, and the fires don't care. So what we've learned over the past 30 plus years of NIOSH reports is it's the same 5 things that we've always talked about. We talk about them in the book. We talk about them in our classes. It's about lack of or improper risk assessment, which is piss poor size up, not knowing your buildings, not knowing your first due, not knowing the fire conditions, what the smoke's telling you, what the hidden things lurking in the building are there to get you. So if you read any NIOSH report, it starts out, once upon a time, a fire department went to a fire, they didn't know what they had, and bad things happened. That's your general NIOSH report. Just kind of like Disney has, once upon a time, everything was perfect, then a bad person came, and then it got better at the end. So it's the same kind of 3-step process. Remember, communications we talk about all the time is a big one. Lack of or improper communications. Anybody listening to this show, watching, knows that. It's a terrible, terrible challenge we've had forever. Number 3 is accountability, not knowing who the boss is, what our job is, or freelancing and vice versa. Number 4 is really what I like to call, it's called incident command as a category, but that's so many things. It could be getting behind the power curve where your companies are way ahead of you, or their fire's way ahead of you and you can't catch it. Chief Shaw is going to share one particular fire that was just a real doozy, and how they fought really hard to stay ahead of the curve on this one. And then finally, lack of SOGs or not following your SOGs. A lot of departments now may have SOGs, but they're not necessarily relevant or appropriate to the current risk. They might be 15, 20 years old. They may not be taking into account FSRI's data, firefighter rescue survey data, firefighter Mayday data. There's all kinds of information out there now that your SOGs can be informed by. So we feel blessed to have our friend Dan Shaw with us today. Before we kick him off, I'd want to give my dear friend and brother, Brian Brushy, a moment to kind of kick off his thoughts for this show, and then we'll give it a rip.
Well, I'm excited, and obviously you can see how do you say you're retired without saying you're retired? The facial hair is a big plan here. And Dan, to further, he seems to keep drifting off in what he's looking at. It's probably because you have the beach right out in front of you right now, which I think
the ocean is right there.
Yeah. So here I am, clean shaven in Oklahoma with really no distractions. So
I can see the beach too from here.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks a lot, fellas. But no, I'm excited about this. Dan, a great friend of mine and mentor for some years now, and proud to have him as a partner in this technical editor role that we're playing for Fire Engineering now. Very excited about that. I hope we can bring a lot to that. Dan and I have been working in a lot of different areas, from teaching around and that type of stuff, and then now on the 1400 consolidation for NFPA. We just want to, continue to pass on that. While some people make enemies of things like NIOSH and NFPA, they really are doing the right things, and they're doing it with the right people. And a great deal of us in the fire engineering community, in the fire service instructor world, are playing roles in NIOSH and NFPA. So try to have some faith, try to have some trust, and really the way to get those going in the direction that you want is to get involved, not sit on the sideline and be a critic. So thank you, Dan, for all that you do and continue to do. It's just like Chief Kastros, being retired doesn't mean bleep to you guys. You're still out there crushing it and investing your heart and soul into the fire service, even if you've separated from your organization. So Dan, welcome. It's great to see you, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. It's great to be with you guys. Two of my favorite people in the fire service, and you couldn't have said it better, Brian. I mean, so many people want to kind of cast aspersions at a lot of these organizations that have a huge impact on the fire service, and it's much easier to condemn than it is to teach and put forth the effort. And I wish more and more people would just contribute to it, because, as you know, when we sit in those 1403 meetings, 1400 meetings, Man, if we had some stimulating conversation that came from people contributing their ideas so that we understand the wide breadth of what the American Fire Service is, because it's not all metro departments, it's not all the smallest rural fire departments, it's all of these things. And we want to make sure that we're doing standards and things that impact all those are the best for it. But they said it great, and I can't be happier to be here with you two guys.
Thanks, brother. Well, you know what? I'm glad that Brian brought up the fact that you guys have been basically kind of promoted in the fire engineering world. I can't think of two better guys. Bill Guston is leaving two big giant shoes behind, and it takes two guys like you one to fill each shoe. That technical editor is a big deal. It speaks to the two of you. I think this is an appropriate time to discuss that as well, actually, while we're on our show today. So everything you want to talk about that, but let's start with the fire. If you don't mind, Chief, maybe tell everybody about your department career, kind of how you rose through the ranks, your philosophy on things, and then we'll jump into the fire.
Yeah, sure. So I was very, very fortunate. I spent just shy of 30 years in Fairfax County Fire and Rescue Department. I started as a volunteer in Howard County, which is just outside of Baltimore, where I'm born and raised. I worked there for a very short bit because Howard County is probably one of the most affluent counties in the country. At the time, they didn't have money. They couldn't afford a recruit school. So they hired volunteers who had firefighter and EMT, met all the qualifications of a paid firefighter, and then hired us at, I think I was 18. Hired us right into shift work. You went right to a shift, and there was a minimum. We had 4 people on the shift with an engine rescue company and medic unit. So every day I was driving the engine or I was driving the rescue. And then in 1995, I was really fortunate because some mentors guided me towards Fairfax County. I had never heard of Fairfax County when I applied there, and greatest decision I ever made. So in my time I spent there, I was really, really proud of just probably the best thing that helped me in my career is I held every rank between probationary firefighter up to when I retired, which was chief of operations. And Fairfax County is just shy of 2,000 members. In operations, we have just about 1,500 people covering 40 plus firehouses and about 400 square miles, and we have everything. When you jam 1.4 million people into 400 square miles, we have high rises, we have mid rises, we have some rural water supply, we have swift water. We have a lot of residential, a lot of guard apartments, and the diversity within that, the socioeconomic classes, we had all that. So it really was a great exposure and great experience. And every day I'm grateful for the experiences, the knowledge, the people I got to work with in Fairfax County, but also just the breadth of experience that they gave me in the platform. They kind of gave me to get better at my trade, but also, as I know you guys attest to, it doesn't take you long once you get out of the silo of your own fire department to realize that you probably work at a pretty great place, and other people, other organizations don't have that opportunity. They don't have that exposure. They don't have the call volume. They just don't have a lot of the things, the money, the infrastructure to be able to do some of the things you did. And I think it's incumbent upon us in those roles to share what you do, share what worked, what didn't work. And that's what makes us as a collective whole better. And that kind of goes into what Brian and I are doing as a technical editor. I mean, I was so glad that, one, very daunting because none of us will replace Bill. But it was really daunting to think, oh my God, I'm going to be doing a technical editor. But I knew when Brian was doing it with me also, it's two of us who are very like-minded. And I think we get a lot of enrichment and a lot of joy out of seeing people who we may not know. We see their names sometimes when they put in for FDIC, but they're the up and comers and they're writing their first article. And everyone remembers when you write your first article, especially for a major trade journal, how big of a deal that is. And if we can have a part of that to help someone get an article written that shares their knowledge from every part of the United States, then I think Brian would agree with me. That's success for us, is to see more and more people spreading that word, contributing, getting that opportunity to, come up into that, the fire engineering world, because that's what we always looked at as the greatest trade journal for us. And now you're contributing to that. And that's really, really important. I know to myself, and I know I can speak for Brian on that too. But I was very fortunate. I retired just about a year ago. And honestly, I worked for a great fire chief. We had been friends for almost 30 years. We worked together in Howard County, and then he came to Fairfax. And quite frankly, I loved working for him, but I didn't want to be the fire chief. Not that I had any any hope of ever getting that position. It took me a while to get to ops chief because I was too ops centric. But yeah, he was a great guy to work for. I loved it, the autonomy he gave me in operations and the support he gave me. And I always realized that, man, if I ever decide to go for fire chief, I'd probably be terrible. I'd be micromanaging operations because I love it too much. So I think it's important when you get to these positions that you have some level of self-awareness. So you realize that maybe that's not your gig. But now I'm really enjoying this. I mean, you get the opportunity to do a lot more, really contribute. I 100% miss the people and the calls. Going to a fire in every rank was immensely gratifying because you train so hard and you do so much work to prepare for that event, for that time when you're called into the arena. And whether you're in a leadership position, or you're one of the ones who are doing that task, pulling that 8 pounds of force in the bale and putting water on a fire, doing that search, to put all your practice in the work and to see it come to fruition and the team work together. Man, when you have a group of people, shoulder to shoulder, leaning in the same direction, doing great things, it's hard to replace. So I definitely miss that, but enjoying this next chapter.
Amen to that, brother. Yeah, you just said it so beautifully, as you always do. I get asked all the time. I'm sure Brian does too. When we travel around the country, what's a real functional fire department? What's a really good chief ops chief combination, the 1 and 2, and you and your boss always came to the forefront of that conversation because it is so rare to find both a fire chief who stays in their lane, but they can stay in their lane because they have a number 2, an ops chief like yourself, who really can take care of business back at home at the firehouse, in the firehouse environment, in the operations. So you guys definitely had an awesome thing going. So you guys, maybe tell everybody, the two of you guys, for a minute or two, what is this new job you guys are doing for fire engineering? What is a technical editor? What's that? What's the hell? Do you even know what that is yet? Or have you said yes? It's like the mafia. It's like you're already in. You don't even know how to get out.
Well, I mean, I think we were told. We were told.
Yeah, exactly. We never even said yes. I found out through text messages following a hump day hangout that I wasn't on. So I mean, it's an appointment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you don't say no. No, it's a huge honor. And Brian and I are still figuring it out for ourselves. But I mean, essentially, what it is when someone writes an article, we all have our kind of SME things. If you ask me to review something about hazmat, I'm not your guy. I don't really know much about it, and I would find someone who was better at it. But we all kind of have our lanes. We seem to be, I hate to say experts because we're always learning, but it's something we're SME in. And then when articles get written, we look at it from the technical expertise side of it. Does this really meet what it's looking for? And I'm sure Brian can share some of what his ideas. But what I'm always looking for is I read them in the sense of credibility. Where it's coming from. Is the author credible talking about the topic which they presented on? And then really most importantly for the reader, are you getting something out of this? I always remember something Diane told me years ago when I wrote my first article, was just remember, there's only one person who gets to write an opinion piece and you're not the editor. And it was 100% correct, right? I mean, because a lot of people want to write opinion pieces because that's probably what they do on their blog, they do on their social media posts, because you have that opportunity. But for fire engineering, that's David Rose. So he writes that. So I always try to look at the articles for the one, the credibility, where they're coming from, what's the message they're trying to share, and if I was the reader, did I get something out of it? Is there something that I could take to my firehouse right now? And man, this is really beneficial. And it doesn't matter if it came from the West Coast and I'm on the East or the North or the South or volunteer or career. Just really seeing if there's a message to something that would resonate with the readers. And there's a broad diversity because we're not all the same when it comes to what we're doing and the challenges we face.
Beautiful. Brian?
Yeah, and I think some of it too is like just, and I'm blessed to have been part of fire engineering for a while now, and having a familiarity with all the different sources that we have. As a kind of a brand family, if you call it that. Technical editor is a great term because I think that originally that's what it was, is like a technical review of fire engineering, because that's where that type of content is supposed to go. Those types of articles go in that magazine. But what's so great now is the development of people. I've seen a lot of articles come through, and I'm like, hey man, this would be great for fire apparatus, some more rig specific item, or some other content comes through more regards to leadership or wellness or crew culture. We now have Firefighter Nation that we can move that content over to. So it's really exciting time to be a part of fire engineering, because one, there's so many places to develop this talent and this information sharing, and then also there's just such an open idea for trying new things and expanding stuff, getting some more videos from the Firegrounds, actually with reviews. So it's just a really exciting time to be a part of it. You say, what is your role? I think we're maybe defining it and redefining it every day, and that's probably the most exciting piece of it. Beyond that, I think it's, we also have input on FDIC. I got to be a big part of last year's FDIC. Dan got to handle the Metro Officers Program. And I think that's something that we want to really pass on to people too, is please consider us like your representatives to FDIC and fire engineering. Our emails are going to be in the magazine right on that third page or whatever it is. You're our constituents. We answer to you. If it's something you want to see at FDIC, something you didn't like at FDIC, something you want to see in the magazine, or content that is developing, or even if you have recommendations of somebody we should reach out to, we really want to be a better, conduit to the fire service. So let's do it. Let's help us become the technical editors and the representatives and the ambassadors of the institution that fire engineering is, by giving us that type of input.
And that's huge. I mean, Brian's so right, because look, I mean, there's a shelf life for every person, and we're always looking for the next people to take this message forth, because it's going to continue. I mean, and Donnie, you can attest to this too. But the day we retired, the fire service didn't stop and do a day of mourning. They just kept on stepping, and that's going to keep happening.
Well, I was pretty upset.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I felt a tear welling up. I didn't know what it was, and then I realized it was because Anthony was retiring.
What is this salty discharge?
Yeah, what is it? I don't understand what this is.
Well, it's funny. We just concluded our advisory board meeting literally this week in Washington, Maryland, technically, and that was the message that David Rhodes sent to everybody. He's kind of like the president. You guys are the senators, and the rest of us on the board are kind of the congressmen. And it's awesome. And the message is the same that these two guys have just said to all of you out there listening. We want your articles. We want your input. We want your content. You are us just maybe a few years ago, and you're going to be us in a few years. So that's what makes fire engineering great. It doesn't matter where you come from. I started, like I tell everybody, in a 1 square mile, 1 station coastal fire department in Carmel, California. I was wearing a mullet and 1 eyebrow, and it was 1987, and I had an open cab American LaFrance pumper, and I got to retire. I was blessed to retire as a battalion chief in a 40-station metro department. And throughout that time, fire engineering, regardless of the politics or the challenges back at home, fire engineering, FDIC was always that place you could go to, like we're doing right now, with like-minded people who love the job, who, whether they're from the Midwest, whether they're from the East Coast or West Coast, which we're representing all 3 coasts right here. We have the same passions. We love this job, but we have different exposure and experiences and perspectives, but we all have the same passion. And that's what's great about the whole fire engineering FDIC enterprise. So thank you for that, gentlemen. Excited to see what you guys are going to be doing in the future. So,
well, Chief, before we yield the floor to the senator from Virginia, should you want to provide a little bit of background on the case studies in command and wisdom from the masters from the books, just to kind of set it up? Because obviously we're going to make a point of reference to the book and review this fire, but how about how the content is presented in the book and what your goal was with that?
Thank you, brother. So this is out of our book, Mastering Fireground Command, Common to Chaos, myself and Brian. And this is a case study in command that Dan Shaw provided us. This is one of about 35 in the book. And the case studies in command are excerpts from friends like Chief Shaw here, who we know, we trust, we respect, who have had significant incidents over the past few years. We want them to be relevant. This isn't something from 10 or 20 years ago. This is like relevant stuff that you probably heard about in the news or on articles already, but it's a deep dive into some significant Fireground emergency scene operations. And so we have stuff, like I said, 35 authors have contributed these short stories and lessons learned. And that's what we've been doing on our command show, is going through one at a time and having these authors, these contributors and professionals come onto the show and dive deeper into what's already in the book. Because that wisdom, that wisdom from the command post is not, it's not relegated to one author or one or two guys. It's all across the country. We all have lessons that we learn. We all have lessons we can share. And, what I'd hoped that Chief Shaw was going to, being the professional that he is, what kind of fire are you looking at? Because he's got a lot of options. He's got a big department. He also has a USAR team that goes internationally, and we always hated them, by the way, because we're out in California. They got to go on all that. And when the USAR was really up and running in the '90s, we were like, "What the hell is those freaking Fairfax guys?" Frick. And but he has this huge pool of experience to draw from, and sure enough, he picked something that's pretty damn big because he was directly involved in it, which doesn't happen that often when you're the ops chief of a department of his size. So, but we also have house fires. We're going to talk to Frank Ritchie about him getting stuck in the basement of a house when he was division supervisor. And we've had other ones from Smells and Bells, but this is a big one. And so we encourage you, when you get the book, to look at these and read these incredible case studies in command, because they are chock full of wisdom. So with that, Chief, tell us about your fire and all that crazy stuff that happened that day.
Yeah, sure. So it's good also to understand the way our organization is set up. So at the time of that fire, I was a deputy chief. So for us, it's fire chief, assistant chief, then deputies. And deputies, there's two on each shift. There's an EMS deputy, there's a special ops deputy. So a deputy oversees a lot of these different areas. And what we did at that period of time was we always had a staff duty officer. So there's one deputy that just rotated, that was essentially, you might be on shift work, you might be on day work. But it was the day work deputies, and you were responsible for coverage for like media requests, coordinating if we had multiple alarms that required us to bring in additional personnel for command staff, and it really kind of lightened the load on the ACs and the fire chief. So I was staff duty that day. It was a Sunday, beautiful day, and I was sitting at home, and our communication center, the dispatcher, so we have a uniformed fire officer who's in the communication center. So it's someone from the field who can kind of bridge that gap between what dispatchers are doing. He called me and said, "Hey, Chief, it sounds like this might be a pretty considerable fire. I'm going to send you the VDOT camera from it." And I'm sitting there nonchalant at home on Sunday. I'm looking at the link he sends me, and I'm like, "Mother of God." The entire top floor of this building is on fire. So what it was, and this is true across the country, I think 2 days after we had a fire, there was another one that was in Ohio, I think. But it was a residential over commercial. So it's about 5 stories of residential, wood frame residential, or would be commercial. And unbeknownst to me at that time, because my knowledge of building codes wasn't that in depth, and we have a great staff who handles a lot of that. But when you build those structures, you don't have to do them in various forms. So essentially, like, you could have, in this case, 700,000 square feet of building under construction with no drywall. So you don't have the drywall one section and go to another section, go to another section. So workers flicked a cigarette into a trash chute that was not sprinklered. And in typical valiant effort of workers, they decided to try to put it out themselves before someone called 911. And then this thing lit off, went to the top floor. And Company 11, which is maybe less than a mile, one of our busier companies. And Fairfax County runs just about 150,000 calls a year. So they run a lot of calls. So, that company gets out the door quick. It's an engine truck and rescue out of that firehouse. But Murphy's Law, it was a lieutenant's first day riding the seat. He just got promoted. Lieutenants don't ride engine companies for us typically unless the captain's off. Captains are always on the engine. So they pull out and they see a giant plume of smoke. And they can see this thing as it's burning. So when I left my house to come there, I live in Baltimore, going to D.C. When I turned right on 295, which is a main road that runs parallel 95, at BWI Airport, I could see the plume of smoke. So from 45 miles away, I could see it. And it was such a large fire that it came up on the radar in the DC region that looked like there was a thunderstorm in that area because there was so much smoke. The end result was it was 700,000 square feet of residential or commercial buildings that burned. I think it was 11 townhouses, 3 cars, a lot of exposure damage to other buildings. And eventually, I think what worked in our favor was it ran out of fuel. The wind shifted and it ran out of fuel. And because there was not enough water for us to be having in place. So when I started down the road, again, Murphy's Law, a chief working overtime is the first new chief to arrive. When he arrives, he pulls up. It was a kind of a courtyard. The tower ladder had went in the middle of the courtyard, but the fire took it off so quickly that now the tower ladder was in risk of burning up. So they had to, get the tower ladder out as quick as possible as he's pulling up. As he's pulling up, he sees in his periphery a woman walking by, trip over LDH, and go unconscious in the middle of the street. Like you can't even make it up. But the end result of it, I mean, people did an incredible job, a fantastic job. I mean, the amount of work and effort they put into this was really just remarkable. But as I say all the time in class, and people in Fairfax probably are glad I retired because they don't have to hear it anymore, but the fire always gets a vote. And they got a really, really big vote that day. And, what we are really good at, and this was the eye-opening thing for us and the executive staff that run the department was we're a really highly effective forward lane 1 to 2 room fire department. That is what we do. The vast majority of what we do is, garden apartments, high rise, residential. It's usually 1 or 2 lines, and more in the residential and garden apartment style is you're doing a forward lay. And so when we're met with a challenge of several 100,000 square feet off, what tactic do you think we employed when we pulled up? Forward lane, 1 to 2 hose line, fire department. Yeah. And it didn't work. And then, when we went to tower ladder operations, we were behind the 8 ball. Like, I mean, as soon as we would get a tower ladder up and we would get water to it, the fire had already moved. It was already gone. So, it made us go back and think, well, have we trained our people for this? Because it wasn't a lack of effort. The effort was incredible, but it was the skill set, right? I mean, the sets and reps were not there. So again, there's all this burden that's upon us every single day to train on different things because, the multitude of things we have to face every day is just growing. But in this case, I went back to look and say, when's the last time we did tower ladder operations? When's the last time we trained on and gave our officers the tools to say, hey, do you know what the elapsed time it takes for you to find a water supply, get the engine to supply the tower and the tower flowing water? Because if you know it's 8 minutes for your company, okay, well, then you can kind of anticipate, well, in 10 minutes, the fire will be here. So I need to position down here. Mm-hmm. And then on top of it, all this was under construction. So, the access to the building was pretty limited because there was construction equipment all over the place. And then, much like 9/11, right? 9/11, like the helicopters could see a lot of the swaying of the towers. Well, we realized that the police helicopter could see where this fire was going, but because it was interior courtyards, we couldn't see that. We only saw it when it just popped out of windows and went an entire block and blew out the backside of a block. So we learned about the coordination between us and police and, some things tactically we have to alter. And, we didn't have drones at that time, but now we do. The ability to put one of our uniformed people in a police helicopter because they know what they're looking at when it comes to the kind of firematic side. So it was really eye-opening. And that fire was so large that it was almost creating its own weather at the command post. Because it was not a windy day, but it was very windy at the command post. Because the updraft of all that fire. And it was, it was kind of biblical. Like when I know myself and another chief came in the backside, all we saw in this densely populated residential area was an entire wall of fire. And we're not wildland interface people. I mean, if we ever get for me, if we had rural water supply, I want to go in the opposite direction. I like hydrants. And rural water, and doing wildland interface, we never do that. And this thing looked like what you guys probably deal with of just an enormous wall of fire, except it happened to be in a densely populated residential area. But it was a very good lesson for us to learn because the other part of it too is like your risk benefit analysis. I mean that fire, that building that was probably 4 or 5 years ago. That entire area was redone, rebuilt. They could care less. Knock it down, build it up again. So when you're talking about 700,000 square feet of buildings under construction, how much risk are you put forth? And what, strategically, does that match what you're thinking you're asking your people to do? So it really was eye-opening for us in many, many facets, from the way we train, the way we operate, the way we're preparing our officers. I mean, is it a once-in-a-lifetime fire? Yeah, but I said like 2 days later, Ohio had the same exact fire. So it's not a once-in-a-lifetime. It may happen again. And ironically, I was an engine officer about 10 years earlier, a mere block further north, where we had a hotel under construction that was on fire. And that I thought was the most biblical fire I've been to, because as we pulled up, people were abandoning their cars on Richmond Highway and running away while fire was raining down out of the sky. But it was a block away. It was a few years separated from when we had this fire. So, I think these are more and more common. And the key is, like, when you look at these things, did it go as well as we wanted it to go? Probably not. But our enemy had a really tremendous vote. But it also is a great opportunity for us to evaluate the way we train, what we're doing in a strategic command, the way we separated command, how we broke that down to be able to, get everything taken care of. And a perfect example is, as a lot of time in rural water supply, we'll designate it a water supply group officer, right? Because water supply is so important in rural water supply. Well, we learned from that fire was that that's really important in a large residential, commercial, whatever type of fire you have. Designate one person who is removed from the operation, not an engine driver, who you're going to put that burden on him or her as an engine driver to figure out the water supply. I mean, we're flowing hundreds of thousands of gallons of water. And, the system thought that there was a water main break because we were pulling so much water from that area. But if we would have designated someone for that, and, one of the tools we instituted to post this fire was the ability to see our water main maps on our CAD, essentially, on your iPad. And if we would designate one person, they would have seen that just across the street was a 36-inch main that we could have tapped into that would give it a greater amount of water, instead of us stealing from each other because we're kind of on the same grid. And these are, hindsight is completely unfair. But, these are things you have to capitalize, especially as an ops chief, to look at and go, okay, the effort was there, which, that's hard to replace. If you have the effort, we can deal with that all day long. The skill was there, but the sets and reps that we provided them was not. And the training was not there to be as robust. And the equipment we had, we reevaluated some of the equipment we had. So it was a lot of really good nuggets that came out of that. I will say the fire was a complete failure because a lot more things could have burned down. There was no loss of life. So it was a tremendous effort, but it was a good eye-opening lessons learned for us to be able to say, okay, when we get so caught in a measure of complacency of doing what we always do, that when that one-off happens, are we prepared, and have we prepared our people for it?
Yeah, I love what you said there about that last statement right there, because those one-offs are becoming more common. Just look at what happened in New York, in Manhattan, this past week. Those kind of got out of vogue, if you will, the active shooters for a while, and then they come back, and then. Yeah. But there's going to be some. I mean, nobody ever thought the Twin Towers were going to happen, and we're going to be commemorating 25 years of that next FDIC. So you have to think out of the box. And that's where FDIC and Fire Engineering provides us this platform to learn from each other. That you think, I'm not going to have a wildland urban interface in Baltimore or in DC, but you know what? I'm going to have a frickin' commercial over residential under construction that's going to be just as devastating and just as challenging from a command and tactical standpoint, resource allocation standpoint. I have a question. What was your incident command structure for this? Was it branches under ops, or how did you guys, because like you said, it's not a 1 or 2 line fire, but it's not from a command standpoint, it's not a 1 or 2 line fire. So what was the command structure?
It definitely evolved, right? Because, geographically, a lot of times we will use, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, right? For our divisions and how we break that down. Or if we had something geographically like this, it was a matter of using street names, right? Or building names. Well, it's under construction. So you're not really sure what the street name is. And you're not really sure the access to get the particular area. So it definitely evolved. It started really as, hey, I can't see the backside of this. And it was really difficult, especially, imagine if you park directly in front of a 5-story building that all 5 floors are on fire. You can't see anything. You don't know what's behind it. You know what's on top of it. You don't know what's on the sides. It's really difficult to tell. So it took a while to get the arms around, like, and it was a matter of getting, different vantage points to figure out how big is this problem, where is the problem, and now, okay, let's identify these different branches and divisions that we want to have in place to be able to tackle this. Now, what resources do you need in your particular branch or division to take care of your one particular problem? Because I said, like, the square footage of the residential and the commercial was somewhat contained, but then
Mhm.
all the townhouses behind it that were under construction that started to light off. Well, that's a whole different problem
Yep.
because half were occupied and half were under construction. And thankfully, the ones that caught fire first were the ones under construction. But again, that's like, you need resources back there. You need eyes back there. You need people looking at it from a perspective of command and control to say, I need a whole nother division back here. And
Yep.
within this division, I need you to give me 3 trucks and 4 engines or whatever
Right.
the case may be. So it took a minute to get a handle on what was the
Sure.
scope of our problem, and then be able to geographically break it down to something that was understandable for everyone on the Fireground. Because again, you didn't have street names. You only had some
Right.
street names. You had some building names, but to figure
Right.
out the most convenient way to do it.
That's a great point. It does evolve, and you're not going to be thrust into a situation like that. Like if it's out here in California, you might be thrust into 20 acres with houses involved, and it's over several square miles. Even 2 square miles can seem like forever. I had a fire one time that it came in as a house fire under construction. It's always under construction, right? So now it's amber casting and it's lighting off quick, and and we ended up at the time we were done, we had 12 buildings involved, including apartment complex, all within an area of maybe less than a city block, but it was in a wild and urban interface kind of area because there's so many trees around. And we had to basically, like you said, Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta, just put a box around it. Oklahoma City did this. Remember, Brian, when we had our class in Oklahoma City, they had just had that massive millions of square feet of that 3-winged apartment building under construction. That thing took off when it was under construction. And we talked about the use of branches. Maybe, hey, there's multiple floors, 3 wings that are distinctly separate. They're connected in the center, but maybe branches to divisions kind of thing. We talk about divisions most of the time. Divisions and groups are in that, first, second alarm kind of world of like you said, garden style, center hall houses. But once you get these massive things going that are way ahead of you, the branches are something to think about. So awesome.
Yeah, and I think it also, like, we always kind of taught our people, with the instant command. And I always try to share this, because command and control, just it has this smell of like elitism. Like you have to be at this higher echelon before you can ever get to understand what this secret languages are they're speaking. And it should be that way, right? I mean, because the most junior person could walk into a volunteer firehouse and they say, hey, get in the right front seat. And you get there, you're the one in command. And you can't falter. We give you the tools to make you better. So we always try to focus on like what's in the box versus what's out the box, right? I mean, one of our really good deputy chiefs always shared this, and I thought he did a really good job with it. But if you think about what's in the box, right? Like it's water supply, it's hose lines, it's searches, it's ventilation, it's ladders, it's rig. Okay, well, a fire like this, we're not really worried about ladders because we're talking about aerial ladders, but not ground ladders. Ventilation, we're pretty good. It's pretty well vented. And searches, we had a good accountability for all the workers, so that was kind of negated and taken care of. So now we're really just focused on the water and the delivery of that water. And I think a lot of times in command, when I say what's in the box, what's not in the box is staging, decon, rehab, reset, your salvage, your herbal. They're important, but they're not important right now. The most important thing is the scope of the incident we have, the firefight, what resources we're going to need. If I got a good handle of that, then I can say, okay, hey, Chief Kastros, I need you to take over this EMS branch. And just tell me what resources you need, where you want to set up aid stations, whatever you want to do. And Brush, I need you to take over staging. Can you just tell me, tell me what you need? And once you get a handle on that, but I think where people struggle a lot of times, especially a large incident like this, is you're trying to think about those 20 different groups and divisions at once. And what's really important right now versus what is important down the road. And it's not negating the importance, but what's really important is putting water on that fire and saving lives. And how do I do that? Oh, do I have enough resources in reserve if my people get in trouble? Oh, I didn't think about that. So it really is trying to keep it simplistic so that you understand that, let's deal with what's inside the box first, and then all the things are outside there ancillary.
It's funny,
So,
Brian. Go ahead, Brian. I don't want to. I think I know where Brian's going. So go ahead.
well, yeah. So so Dan, was the initial operations or initial operations defensive? Were you guys going defensive from the start, or?
I think
Then I got a follow-up question.
had aspirations for offensive, but it was defensive. And that's a great point, because defensive is tough for us in the American Fire Service, because defensive means a defeatist attitude, like I've given up and I lost. And it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I guess, what I was going to start to pry you on a little bit, because one thing I took away from you're saying that is like, hey man, we're really good single family forward lay, and how you adjusted that. We've done that in the sense, recognize that, hey, we are poor at, because we're gonna find those. We're gonna have defensive fire conditions upon arrival. Like it's just gonna happen. We have to prepare for it. So we need to exercise that muscle, or else we're gonna pull a hamstring when we have to go in there. Just the same as transition of strategies is extremely difficult. Yes, we want to be offensive all the time, and the way I kind of look at it, and it's kind of rooted in some of the information from Chief Kastros, is when we're offensive, we want to initiate action all the time. We want to take action when we can be offensive, intervene, take care of it. But like that, and we put it as part of our arrival report. If you show up and you have defensive fire conditions, that's that kind of mention of like, all right, let's take a beat and let's set up this scene. So I totally, that's really challenging for a go-getting, forward-thinking, success-bias fire service to have those programs in defensive operations. So, that's kind of how I break it down. And I think that's, like you're saying, you want to start doing all these tasks and tactics, but really you do need to set up that organization. All right, let's start channeling resources over here. And then when I was at West Metro, again, a larger organization, we had that policy and procedure that when you do call for a second, the first unit into the staging area became the staging officer. And as painful as it was, Ben, flying down the road in the ambulance and pulling into staging and thinking you're just going to take your gear and run up there and start fighting fire, the most important thing was for you to take that role and be the staging officer and have the other medic out there, setting up where guys are going to park, and they would just call you and ask for an engine and send an engine up. And you had to have that humility of like, man, they don't need a paramedic up there. They need rigs up there, but I can serve this role of starting to set up and organize the scene for these larger scale incidents. So I totally agree with you, man. Emergency operations and emergency management are two different things, but they intertwine a lot, and the switch gets flipped really quickly. So this is an emergency management incident, and it's great that you got that experience.
Yeah, and you're right, man. I always try to share with people, like, defensive is a mode we're in at this particular time. It doesn't mean we're setting it forever. Mm-hmm. We can always transition back out of it. But, and to your point, Brian, like that was always one of my breakdowns when I would, as a deputy chief, battalion chiefs typically run the fires. Deputies will take it when it gets to greater alarms, or if there's a lack of command presence or, command and control. And my always telling question was, if it wasn't answered by what I heard on the radio coming down the road, but it was kind of like the decision tree. The first thing I'm going to ask you is this offensive or defensive? And if I couldn't tell by the way you were talking, that's the first indication there's not really good command presence. But if you haven't asked yourself that question, or you haven't made that really clear to the people you're putting in the harm's way, then you're not in command. You're just you're a stagehand sitting there watching the rodeo happen. You're a spectator to this, and that's not what you're being paid for, and that's not what your rank is about. So you're right. Like that is the first thing in the algorithm of that decision tree is like, am I offensive or defensive? Okay. If I said offensive, next question is, should I be? And if I don't have good substantial proof to say I should be, go back to first question. And if you're a defensive, the first question should be, am I really defensive? Because if I walk up and see two hose lines at the front door, that's not defensive. Like that guy over there is defensive, but those two hose lines are not.
We had a piano.
Kastros is extremely defensive.
I'm very defensive. Are you defensive as a person, or are you offensive?
Or sometimes you're
combination. I'm combination.
Sometimes you're offensive.
I am very offensive. Case in point, last FDIC. Anyway, or this past week with the posts.
That has been documented.
It has been documented for posterity and dexterity. Anyway, so one of the things that we introduced in this book, in our Mastering Fireground Command Calm the Chaos book, is the combination strategy. You're not stuck with these two polarizing options. Larger incidents oftentimes avail themselves to a combination strategy. Like, okay, this section of this building is written off, but we can save it at this firewall or at this street or whatever, because they're so large. And so they often come into play in the larger commercial type scenarios. And so the combination strategy says, look, yeah, we all have to get over it and write off this and get past that. And then let's focus on what we can save, which is this other 2/3 of the building. We had a piano factory fire one time. And when I arrived on the second alarm, this thing was already probably at least a third gone. Fire is through the roof. It's a tilt up. So the roof's gone. The walls were starting to come down. And guys, like to your point, Dan, guys were still in the defensive space. I can hack it. It's like
5 more minutes.
Yeah, 5 more minutes. And I'm like, I got assigned Division Charlie. I'm like, no, you guys were over there now. The Mason-Dixon line is about 100 feet that way. There's a firewall. We're gonna anchor off that firewall and save the rest of this. You guys are wasting time and you're maximizing your risk for nothing. Get your asses over there. And that's where those tactical supervisors play a vital role in executing the incident commander's priority and strategy. Without them, it's the radio traffic gets bogged down, and we start to see the Nash 5 come into alignment, and then we are no longer effective. So things like communication, accountability, and risk assessment up and down the chain doesn't stay in alignment, right? And so there's a balance, because you're right. ICS never put a fire out. Never. I've checked a lot of fire reports. Never put a fire out, but it sure as hell organized the people and the resources that did, and that's the thing. So if you think about it. If you think about scaffolding, I remember when the U.S. Capitol, near and dear to you, Dan, close by in your backyard, when it was being remodeled, it was covered in scaffolding. Well, that's the incident command system. It's the scaffolding. It's what gets you in place. It's what supports the operation. But that's what carries the guys with the nails and the plaster and the all the materials to build the building.
Yeah, it's your game plan.
That's your game plan. And that's the thing, is that there's a balance between, okay, as an incident commander, I have to be decentralized in my thinking, which I know you always were from all the conversations we had. You're very empowering in your leadership style. And so as an incident commander, we have to decentralize as fast as possible to get more brains and eyes and ears around this incident, even if it's a house fire, let alone a big ass incident like you guys had, where it's like, look, I need intel back so we can stay ahead of this power curve. And I might need to field promote somebody as Division Charlie just for the first thing. All I need is somebody eyes in the rear. You've got an alarm back there with you, and I need one guy to be my eyes and ears, your Division Charlie. Let me know what we need and what we got. And then I can now reduce my span. I can get eyes back there and reduce the communication on the radio. Now, if I just go to Bravo and Delta, for example, I've taken 3, 4, or 5 alarms and made it into a 4-to-1. That's a simple basic example. But the point is there's a balance between the tactics and executing the operation and the work getting done and organizing it as you build it, kind of like scaffolding and building around the building, And that's the challenge of modern incident command, is because we have more dynamic incidents like this than ever before. We have more resources going than ever before. We have more check boxes like RIC and medical and rehab and all this other stuff. I mean, we're going to probably set up a mental health care unit on fires in about another year or two, all unseen, and then we have less experienced people at all levels doing it. So it's really all that stands in the way of that is training. And this FDIC fire engineering world that we are all part of is what provides the infrastructure for that around the nation, because we can no longer afford to be siloed, because before you know it, you're going to be in middle of somewhere USA thinking, we'll never have that fire. Well, tell the guys that had the Walmart fire about that. I mean, there's all these fires are sprouting up everywhere. We burned down a mall one time and thought that would never burn. So it happens.
And even line of duty deaths. They're not all in Chicago. They're not all in FDNY. They're in places like Keokuk, Iowa. They're in places you've never heard of.
Porterville, California. Yep.
Yeah, it happens everywhere. And you're exactly right about it. The way you have to be agile in the way you do command, but also be very communicative in the way you operate. I mean, I had a fire. We had 5 townhouses off on one side and 4 on the other side. So I had the 5 on this side, and really it was like that one defensive, that one defensive, that one defensive, that one offensive, that one definitely offensive. we're trying to take a stand here. I'll tell you when we're going to transition. But if you don't communicate that well, it's like, well, which one did you say? Well, I'm in the
Oh no.
offensive team. I'm on the defensive team. But it was abundantly clear to me. But like, if you don't communicate that and say, all right, we're done with these three structures. There's no saving these. We want copious amounts of water. But these two, I need you to get inside of and see if we can stop it from getting the attic space. But you got to communicate that, right? You got to be very clear in the way you communicate it and what you want. And you can't keep it to yourself, especially in command.
No, that's why those tactical division and group soups are they're your bouncers. They're the ones that keep everyone in line. Hey guys, you may not have heard it because you don't listen to the radio because you're working, but stay out of there, go in there. Because we don't have enough resources for everybody to do what they feel like doing. We need to take our limited resources, put them over here where the transition is, and hold the line. Not waste it over here on what's lost.
Yeah,
and those bouncers are very powerful.
You guys both just talked about communications and the need to communicate things on the Fireground, but Dan, to roll you back to you initially getting the call from a fire officer in your communications center, and how that laid out. Talk us through and provide us a little bit of detail on the comm side of it, more technically and strategic on that end. Is this something that went to multiple radio channels managed at your command post? Is it something that a field comm unit comes out for?
Yeah.
This is a part of the fire service. A lot of agencies are growing, or they're merging with other organizations, or they have county resources. So let's talk about more the kind of the IT side of communications, not just the human side of communications here. How did this structure out in radio channels, communication supervisors, and those types of things?
Well, it's immensely important that, like, as we learn as you go through your career and you go higher in the ranks, you get more tenure, whatever the case may be, is that the power of relationships is what's going to make you successful. And the better relationships you have, the more you can call on someone. Because you don't have to know all the answers, but you got to know someone who knows that particular answer. And it's so important. Yeah. And specific for this incident, the benefit that came out of 9/11 for us, because the Pentagon is right next to Fairfax County. Arlington County is where the Pentagon is. Obviously, a lot of our resources were there. And so, we really evolved what we did in radio communications. So we have a multitude of channels for every jurisdiction. We're geographically identified by a leading number. So like Fairfax is engine 4 something. So 401. And the reason that came to fruition is because at the Pentagon, you had Arlington engine 10, DC engine 10, Fairfax engine 10. And if you're telling those units engine 10 evacuate, which one? So, we changed it to the 0 bank was DC, the 100 bank was Arlington, the 200 bank was Alexandria, Fairfax were the 400 bank. So that allowed us, that helps really well on the communication side to be able to have those geographically, because you have a lot of mutual aid, because you're talking about 5, 6, 7 alarms. But you're 100% right. We have a very robust communication section. The field communication unit comes out. They have the ability to set up some repeaters, right there on the Fireground for us, and then help with that, because I'm not going to be able to manage that. We automatically, any fire you go to, you get 3 channels, right? You get the channel you're operating on, you get the dispatch channel you're on, the channel you're operating on, a command channel, and an additional channel for you to have like staging or EMS. So every incident's going to have 3 channels for you to operate off of. But it was a matter of, looking to our comms person, because I don't know how to do that. I don't have the ability to do it right now because my bandwidth is limited to this command and control, and that's what our incident commander did a really good job of. I mean, the deputy chief who ended up being in charge of that fire, got a good handle on it pretty quickly and called for the proper resources. So a mobile command unit to get us from the back of a vehicle, back of an SUV, and move to a larger vehicle, to have the ability to look at different screens, to be in a cone of silence, that you're removed from all the noise that's happening there. Because when you have a city block on fire, a lot of people show up. But then to have a communications specialist to be able to say, look, man, this is the problem I'm having. Do you have some solutions? And they were already on top of it. Chief, we will blend these channels together. We will handle this part of it. So I feel bad for organizations that would have something of this multitude and don't have that infrastructure and support and comms, but you realize the importance of it pretty quickly when you have that many radio channels, that many people talking on the radios, and so many people who want to talk to you as the incident commander, to look at someone and go, hey, I need some help. I need you to set this up so that I'm not losing anything. You tell me what I need in the command post. And this kind of leads to the command side of it too, is it always kills me. When I look at line of duty death reports or close calls, and the two people we always blame is one, the one who died because they can't defend themselves, and the other one is the incident commander. Okay, what kind of support did you give the incident commander? So for us, we would show up with a small militia on a fire. So within 8 to 12 minutes, there's about 60 people on a fire. So there's 60 people operating, but there's one person responsible for all of them. Oh, there's more chiefs that showed up. But what'd you do with them? They didn't go to the command post. They went to go take a tactical position, which might be really important. But okay, now we're in a third alarm. Now we have like 100+ people. Who's responsible for all of them? One person. So you need to build your command post and say, okay, I'm going to be the one talking to radio. I'm the incident commander. You're the deputy incident commander. You're handling restat. You're handling systat. We're all on the command post together. But the thing I can focus on is listening and looking at the building or the incident, the scope of the incident I'm dealing with. And then that opens you up to go, okay, I need comms help. Comms person, come here. That's what I need help with. But if you were trying to handle all those things by yourself as an incident commander, you're never going to think about comms. You're going to be so inundated.
Exactly.
You just need this tool to work. So it really is important whether you have a section, a communication section, or a field communications unit, or you just have some really squared away individuals that say, listen, you're my comms person. You understand this. I need you. If we have a fire of this magnitude, that's someone I can rely upon. And I go back to, I was really fortunate to do Josh Laird's line of duty death report in Frederick. And that's one of the things we looked at was, Josh had made 17 transmissions when he fell through the floor to when he made his last transmission to say, tell my family I love them. 17 transmissions that were never heard that he was talked over top of because he never hit the orange button on his radio to give him the EA. Well, we asked the question of every individual who came in for the interview, what does this orange button do? And they really didn't have a firm idea. So they weren't bad firefighters. Goes back to training. How much time do we spend on training you on this $14,000 device we give you that you're going to remember in the most chaotic situation you're going to be involved in when you think you're going to die? So, just to go back to stress and affirm the importance of the communications, whether it's the hardware aspect of our radios or the software aspect of us, the humans who are talking on it, being programmed to understand how to speak to it. But I think the point you're getting to is really important, is that you got to have either the people, the infrastructure, the support to be able to take that off your plate when you're dealing with an incident of this magnitude, because there's only so much bandwidth. I don't care how salty you are that you can handle when you're on a fire ground when things are not going well or the incident's still escalating.
Yeah, well said. We talk about in the book that modern incident command is a team sport. It's not a solo operation. It's not golf. It's not tennis.
100%.
It's football. and you need a head coach and a quarterback
the challenge with that, Donnie, is as chiefs have egos, right? As an incident commander, I don't need a senior chief to sit outside my window like a stalker looking at me. Either do something, take command, or, hey, say, I'm going to take this off your plate. And so we really tried to change that script when I was out. Not to say like my predecessors did not do a lot of that, but we really focused on that was, hey, if I show up at a fire, I am there to support you.
Right.
And that support may be, hey, I'm taking command from you because you have a good command presence, or you're doing great. Keep talking on radio. You're a solid voice. I'm going to handle these things. I'll take the title of incident commander because I'm not going to shirk or, walk away and abdicate my responsibility. But you keep talking on radio. I'm going to handle these things. Hey, next battalion chief, I want you to do this. And it's not about egos. It's about the people you're putting in harm's way and the civilians we took the oath to protect. So put your ego in your back pocket, and we're going to focus on how we can best command this incident.
Yep. Beautiful. Love it. Chief, thank you for sharing all that. That was a wealth of information just from one incident. Tell us, we talked about you and Brian are doing as our senators and Fire Engineering as technical editors. What's going on with you now? What are you taking all this wealth of knowledge and experience, and what are you doing now in the world besides being a senator?
Well, the good thing is I'm really fortunate. I get to still teach, do some keynotes, do some consulting. So that's really, really beneficial to have the ability to kind of go and meet with people. And what I love, and you guys do the same thing, I used to teach for MIFRE years ago, University of Maryland Fire Rescue Institute. Great place, but I just did not like teaching curriculum that was based upon a singular text. And I'd much rather go teach and, listen to a client say, look, we'd love for you to come in. What do you need help on? Well, we really would need a class on first do size up or command and control or with our chiefs or with leadership or whatever it is. And so I get to spend a lot of time just cultivating some messages to try to help people as much as I can with the message we have. The other part I get to do is, Brian mentioned before, I get to help out with the Metro Officers Leadership and Innovation Summit that we do at FDIC, which, man, it's immensely beneficial, I think, for the people who come there. And I wish I was part of it. And kind of the background was, I had mentioned to David years ago when I was still working, is that I had never heard of it. And I'm in the 14th or 15th largest fire department in the country. I don't even know what it is. And I'm in a Metro department. And so when I retired, I got the nod of like, hey, big mouth, guess what you're going to help out with? But it's been great because what it is, what we do is we bring in Metro officers. If you're in a Metro fire department, you just fill out a short application. You get a hotel room downtown that you pay for, but you get a hotel room downtown. Your breakfast and lunch is covered. The happy hour is covered. That is engagement with that. And then you get to sit with almost, last year we had over 90 Metro officers, your peers, because the higher you get up in the ranks, the lonelier it gets. And you have really limited time to ever be proactive. You're just reactive every single day. So we want you to carve out 2 days to come here and sit with your peers. And what we essentially do is they do like TED Talks. We pick these departments to submit. You have to submit something innovative they've done that they were willing to share. And then I break those down by leadership, operations, training, or administrative. And so that we do 4 in a block, and they do a presentation to share with their peers. That's enough to stimulate some conversation and say, hey, we're thinking about doing this in my department. So don't waste all this time reinventing the wheel. Call Brian and ask Brian what he did. And it works out well. And then they go right to roundtable topics that we curate based upon the biggest things that we're facing in the American Fire Service, where they can talk amongst each other and kind of hash out some ideas. But the most important thing they get out of that when they leave is, one, I think it's leadership. You're showing the people that you lead every single day that regardless of your rank or tenure, you're still out there being a student. You're building those relationships. And the second part is they walk out with 90 plus cell phone numbers and emails of people they can call to lean on, who are their peers, who are going through the same exact thing. And like I said before, if you haven't realized yet in your career, relationships are what make you successful. The ability to pick up the phone and like I could call either one of you guys and just be a sounding board, or I could get some ideas off you. So that works out really well. And then the last thing I'm working on is we're really trying to bring suppression QA was something that we brought together in Fairfax, because I always get frustrated by the fact that we can never answer the question of if your last fire was a success or not. That was not an objective or subjective, where you're looking in the mirror going, yeah, I was in command. It was great. But we wanted to have a mechanism, a tool to capture real data on the Fireground to give back to a department to say, now you can judge it. You can judge. It's not punitive, because you shouldn't be disciplined into something that by ops chief. That should be handled at a granular level. What I wanted to see is like, how quickly do we get water on fire? How good are we at stretching hose lines, getting a water supply, our communications on the Fireground, our completion of our lap, our searches? How quickly were you doing? Were we doing VEIS, or were we doing a conventional through the front door type of search? How do we do with our ground ladders? How do we do with the aerial ladders? And so it compiles all this data to give to you as an ops chief or as anyone, because it's 100% transparent. Anyone can see it. And peer pressure is a great thing to stimulate you to do a good job on the Fireground and be prepared for when you're every 64 seconds, because that's when we run a residential building fire, comes up, that you're going to be ready to go to work. And so, that platform, I'm working on kind of designing that to be able to share beyond what we did in Fairfax, because it's so important. I mean, I think that the North Star for me in that project is we want to be able to provide any fire department the tools, the knowledge, the data, and the opportunity to become the best that they can become. And you'll never be able to do that if you don't be able to look at what your last fire was and say, yes, it was a overwhelming success, or no, we didn't cut the mustard. Okay, then one of the things we suffer at is our inability to do a root cause analysis and think critically. Well, the
Yep.
causation of that probably goes back to one of these 4 pillars that we see is in every line of duty death. It's either training, doctrine, your human performance, and that those things are what really lead us to understand it. So if it's not doctrine, training, accountability, or human performance, I don't know what it would be, because it's usually going to be one of those 4. And so it gives you the opportunity to open the door for us a lot of times. And so really trying to design that to be able to offer that to other fire departments, to be able to have this comprehensive thing, really like a chief's dashboard that everyone can see, that you can see how you did. And you can start to see the pockets of which you have to train on, because we don't want you to train arbitrarily. We want you to train with purpose. And that purpose is to be really good at our mission that we took an oath. Having some mechanism to gather relevant, appreciable data, but also has this really great downstream impact. Like, we changed the way we spec our apparatus based upon what we put out of suppression QA. We realized we were never really throwing 35s. So why are we buying so many 35s for our tillers and our towers and our straight trucks? Like, we know we're throwing 24s and 28s, so maybe we put more into that. We changed, the nozzles we had on our tower ladders. We used to have 2. We don't need 2. We need 1. We need 1 highly effective firefighting nozzle on there. So we have the opportunity to do that. And then it looks at your training. What are you training on? And is that training working? Because that's the other reason, we want to look at this, to have this opportunity is, if you're spending all this time to train, don't you want some sort of affirmation that it's working?
Yeah. What are the metrics?
I want that affirmation across 400 square miles, not just one battalion that's goes and gets after it. There's 8 battalions times 3 shifts. I mean, we want to see what all those are doing, and is it working? And if it's not working, what do we have to do organizationally to fix it? So still busy, busy as I want to be, but still just trying to take a lot of the things that I learned and experiences I was able to have in Fairfax and share that with just a greater audience.
Love it. How do people get a hold of you for this, what you're doing, either for a keynote, a teaching, or this after action kind of tactical review stuff?
Well, thank God I'm surrounded by really smart younger people who set up a website for me. So this mine would be terrible. I'd probably be on MySpace. But it's
boldandbeautiful.com.
Brian, that was taken. I couldn't believe it.
What are the chances? What are the chances?
It's just chiefdanshaw.com. All my information's on there, all my contact information. We constantly keep updating that, but everything is all kind of warehouse right there for people to contact me and reach out to me.
Fantastic. Brian, you got anything else for our esteemed colleague?
Just a great thank you, and enjoy the beach this afternoon, boss. We'll be in touch soon.
Thanks, guys. Always a pleasure to spend time with you guys.
Yeah, thank you, brother. God bless. We appreciate you. And God bless American Fire Service, everybody. Don't forget, get your copy of Mastering Fireground Command Calm to Chaos. And we're teaching classes all over the nation. Brian's hosting at Midwest City, Oklahoma, a Calm the Chaos Train the Trainer open enrollment class. It's already full. The class isn't even until November. It's already full. But we're having a waiting list. So if you want to find out more about that or any other classes, email us at info@trainfirefighters.com or go to the website trainfirefighters.com and ask us if you want us to come and teach Calm the Chaos at your shop. Brian, anything else, brother?
Nope.
All right. God bless. Thanks, everybody.